You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. CBS ranks every Division I college football coach like 1 to 131 every year in the offseason. Is this kind of stunning? I legitimately have no problem whatsoever at all with any of this. They got Bama number one, or Nick Saban number one overall, as you'd expect. I mean, he's the best coach in the history of the game. And then followed by Kirby Smart and then Jimbo Fisher. Some of you may not like that, but the reality is the first three coaches on this list are the three coaches in the league that have won national championships. I have no problem with it whatsoever. Last year, Jimbo was 2, Kirby was 3. Kirby won the Natty last year. They flipped. So I'm totally good with that. And then, as it should be, next on the list is Brian Kelly, followed by Mark Stoops. Brian Kelly, who has not won a national championship, but has been to a BCS championship game and twice to the college football playoff. They have him ranked as the 7th best coach in all of college football and the 4th best coach in the SEC. That certainly speaks to the quality of coaching in the Southeastern Conference. But the write-up is the first-year coach of the Tigers led Notre Dame to 2 college football playoff berths, a spot in the BCS championship game during his 12-year tenure in South Bend. That success came despite academic and geographic challenges that make it difficult to sustain success at an elite level. He's 263, 96, and 2 overall in his career. That does not include vacated wins, which, including the vacated wins, he would be the winningest active coach in college football, and he's been the National Coach of the Year 3 times. So Brian Kelly is certainly warranted of being where he is on that list. You can't justify putting him any higher if the standard is national championships and the 3 guys ahead of him have all won national championships. If Brian Kelly goes and wins a championship at LSU, he will clearly jump up that list behind only Nick Saban. I am perfectly fine with Mark Stoops being next. He's 5th in the SEC, 16th overall for a guy that has taken a program that has largely been irrelevant outside of the Bear Bryant years, a minute with Hal Mumme and Tim Couch, and then there was that millisecond when you had Andre Woodson there in 2007. And Mark Stoops has built consistent success. I mean, to have 2 10-win seasons and 6 straight bowl games, it's incredible. I mean, yes, he deserves a ton of credit. It's a little confusing and perplexing how he hasn't gotten a better opportunity considering what he's been able to do in Lexington. But I would have Mark Stoops ahead of Lane Kiffin, who they have as the 6th best coach in the SEC right there. And I think that's warranted considering his successes, his major successes as a head coach have been minimal, but he's been an NFL head coach. He's been a successful college football head coach. This is now his 4th stop. Of course, Tennessee, Southern Cal, Florida Atlantic, and now Ole Miss. But, I mean, he has gone to the Nick Saban School for Wayward Coaches and reinvented his career and is worthy considering his offensive prowess. I might flip these two. Sam Pittman, they have 7th, and then Mike Leach 8th. I might flip those because, Leach has been a program builder both at Texas Tech, at Washington State, and now trying to do more with less. Pittman is just 2 years into his head coaching career. So it's a little hard for me to justify having Pittman ahead of Mike Leach. But considering what Sam Pittman inherited, the fact that Arkansas was on a double-digit SEC game losing streak, and to have won, to have gone 9-4 last year. Of course, he was 3-7 his first year, but that was all SEC games. To have 3 conference wins when they hadn't won an SEC game in 3 years was stunning. So Pittman, Leach, Billy Napier, 9, I think is justified. He's been a very good head coach at ULL, and he moves over to Florida now. I think that's appropriately placed. He's had more success than Josh Heupel, who they have at 10, 1 spot behind him. I think their group of 5 success. Napier, his run at ULL was better than Heupel's run at Central Florida, so I'm totally cool with that being where it is. Shane Beamer jumps up a couple of spots this year. They have him at 11 in the SEC, followed by Eli Drinkwitz, and then he's only he only bests Brian Harsin, who finished his first year last year and was not very good, and then Clark Lee, who was dreadful in his first year at Vanderbilt and bringing up the rear, which is what everything associated with Vanderbilt football should be. So I actually have no problem whatsoever with anything on that list, which is stunning because usually coaching rankings have always been a point of contention here because LSU's last two coaches were very polarizing. I mean, Les Miles for a lot of, and we got to sort of purge in our brain a little bit how it ended with Les. But you got to remember, man, Les Miles had an 800 winning percentage for much of his time in Baton Rouge. He won a championship in 2007. They played for another one in 2011. Like, for a lot of Les's tenure, as idiosyncratic as he was, as unconventional as his style was, the results were also inarguable. And so LSU fans oftentimes found themselves defending Les Miles. Again, it doesn't. You forget it now because we're now removed from the Miles era. You've had another coach hired and fired since, or two coaches hired, one of them fired since. But for a long time, it was defending Les Miles. And then Ed Ogeron comes in, and he, I don't know that any coach could have had a more seismic shift in these rankings year to year from, oh my God, LSU, what did you do hiring the guy that won three SEC games at Ole Miss, to greatest season ever, to fired a year and a half later. So Ed Ogeron was always tough to peg in these rankings for anybody. But LSU fans have largely spent 15 years trying to defend their coach in these rankings. I don't think you can right here. I think it's perfectly placed for Brian Kelly. They have him in the top 10 overall in college football, the fourth best coach in the SEC behind only the three guys that have won a national championship. And if he wins a championship at Baton Rouge, he'll go right behind Nick Saban as the second best coach in the SEC. So I'm perfectly fine with it. I don't think, however, that Brian Kelly will be winning a national championship this year in the SEC. One of the other things that CBS did is they put out their strength of schedule for the Southeastern Conference. And this was sort of arbitrary. They kind of looked at schedules, and it wasn't a metric based on like last year's winning percentage or anything. They just looked at it and sort of gauged who they thought had the easiest or the toughest schedule. And so they had LSU's schedule as the sixth toughest, so right in the middle of the SEC. For what it's worth, ESPN's FPI does put a metric, like an objective metric to strength of schedule. And as you'd expect, like, the ESPN FPI strength of schedule is just completely top-loaded with SEC schools. Like the all of college football, it's top-loaded with SEC schools. Like Auburn has the toughest schedule in America. Number 2 is Mississippi State. Number 3 is Vanderbilt. Number 5 is Tennessee. Number 6 is Texas A&M. Number 7 is Bama. Number 8 is South Carolina. Number 10 is LSU. So LSU, according to FPI, has the 10th hardest schedule in all of college football, but the 8th hardest schedule in the SEC. So whichever you want to believe, either way, there's obviously SEC schedules are tough. That's not breaking news. The second weakest schedule in the SEC this year, however, is Georgia. And in a year where they lose a ton on defense, but they're coming off a national championship, that's a big relief for Georgia and Kirby Smart to have that. They basically drew the long straw. Congrats to Georgia. But of the SEC schedule, the LSU schedule, CBS wrote that anything for LSU, anything more than 7 wins would be a minor miracle in year one. I don't know that I would say a minor miracle because I do think LSU can get to 8 wins. I do think they will get to 8 wins, by the way. I've told you I think their ceiling is 9. I think their floor isn't as low as some think, but their ceiling isn't as high as many fans would want to think. I think LSU's floor this year is 7-5. It's really hard for me to imagine this team only winning 6 games. Likewise, I think their ceiling is 9. I don't think they can win 10 games in the regular season when you have Bama on the schedule, and then you have road games against Auburn, Florida, Texas A&M, and Arkansas, and then a home game against Tennessee. I think any of those is possible that you could lose it. I don't think you will lose all of them, obviously, but you could lose any of them. So I don't know that I would say 7 would be a minor miracle. I think 9 would be a minor miracle. I think 8 is likely or is probable, and 7 is likely for this LSU team. But the wild card, and we're going to talk about it in hour 3, the wild card is Jaden Daniels. The wild card is, and I'm not assuming that Jaden Daniels is going to be the starting quarterback, okay? And I know we've had this conversation a ton, but I'm saying he's the wild card for LSU because if Jaden Daniels at this point in his career can match the season he had his freshman season, then you're talking about an LSU team that is capable of bumping up against that glass ceiling that I have put in place for them and possibly exceeding it. If you have a dynamic playmaker at quarterback, which I'm not really expecting, but you could. I know there's a lot of disagreement on Miles Brennan, but the reality is Brennan in his career started 3 games. For all you think you know about Miles Brennan, you really don't. He started 3 games. And, oh, by the way, this coaching staff brought in a quarterback that started 30 games because they weren't content with the group that they had. So, see how it plays out. I mean, Stetson Bennett just won a national championship, okay? But I think Jaden Daniels is the wild card, not only for LSU, but the entire SEC. If Jaden Daniels is a star, which he can be, if he's a star, then I think that disrupts everything we think we know about the SEC this year and likely moving forward. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.